Okay, good afternoon. It's an evening now, ladies and gentlemen. We are with Mr. Sabela, who is going to talk to us about the topic of unlocking the keys of Solomon's wisdom. My name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and I'm your host for the Are We Transforming platform. We're just going to allow him to talk about his book, actually, that he has authored. I believe it's your first book, and we're going to allow him to just take us through, and then we'll be able to pose questions in relation to the book. So you can just give a brief indication of who you are, where you come from, what led to you deciding to write a book. Then we can take it from there. And thank you so much again for making time to come and engage with us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
My name is Bongumenzi Sabela. I was born and raised in Devon. 28 years old. I'll be turning 29 on the 8th of November, 2 days from now. Yes, so writing the book was part of my self-discovery, discovering my God-given talent that I had been searching for a long time. I realized that I have a gift of communicating and writing. So I realized that I need to share it with the world. So something prompted me. I had an impression to write a book but however, I did not listen. I just wondered how will I write the book, because it was something I had never done before. But as time went by, it got more and more stronger, the impression and the thoughts. And then I started reading the book of Proverbs. I started gaining an understanding of what wisdom is, what knowledge is, and what understanding is. And then suddenly, I was prompted to start writing the book based on Solomon's keys of wisdom. And then that's when I started writing. Yeah.
You know, when I spoke to you, I realized that I never actually studied the book of Proverbs to the level where you probably have. Out of studying the book of Proverbs, I'm assuming that you have identified several keys. Maybe you can take us through how many keys you have been able to identify, and how can you relate them also to your life before we can even go out and relate it to other people's lives.
Okay, I've identified more than 100 keys found in the book of Proverbs. But however, in the book, I share about 30 to 35 of them. And then I go into depth and I mention how to use them, what their purpose is. Some of these keys, for example, are time. So in the book of Proverbs, we find that time is very important to the extent that the writer tells us that in the morning we should wake up, go to our work, and then at the evening he says, let not your hands be idle, but work on your own job. So what is he saying? He's basically saying that in as much as you do have your own job, work at it, do your 9 to 5 hours, but then when you come back at home at evening, do not be idle, do not rest and think that you're gonna find security with the job that you have. But however, use the time you have to work on another job, your own job, perhaps a business that you do with someone else, perhaps maybe you write books just like me, so you work on that. And then he goes on to say, oh, you do not know which one will succeed, which one will prosper you, whether this one or that one, or maybe both of those will prosper you. So why is he saying that? He's saying that so that he may help us understand the importance of using time, even when we think we do not have time. Because at many times when we start to work, especially young people, when they do their 9 to 5 jobs for the first time, maybe after graduation, they start to think that they do not have enough time because now from 8 o'clock up until 5 or 4, they're working somewhere else. And by the time they go home, they feel tired. They feel like it's already the end of the day and there's no more time or nothing productive that they can do. But when they actually do have time, because in reality, as human beings, we only need about 6 hours to rest. Our bodies are rejuvenated, refreshed, and then we're good to go for the next day. Even to the extent of 4 hours, we can sleep 4 hours. So it teaches us to use our time wisely. So that's one key. Another one I mentioned.
How did you use it to make sure that, like, sort of applying that to your life? Because I believe that studying, having to come back home and be expected to do specific tasks, the management of time is quite key. And at the same time now having to write a book, how did you apply that key to yourself? I mean, now you'll be talking to young people who will be listening to this video, and what is it that they can take out of that?
Yes. So when I wrote the book, I was still working for a Christian non-profit organization. And I used to go to work. We used to start at 8 up until 4 p.m. So I would go to work, do everything. Then at 4 p.m., I would walk back home. And then when I get home, I would take 1 hour just to rest. And then around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I eat dinner with the family, spend some time with them. And then at 8 p.m., instead of watching TV now, I would go to my laptop and use all of the research that I was doing during the day, during my lunchtime, use all of the research that I've gathered to now structure the book and put the book together. I would work from 8 up until 11 o'clock at night, or even more, depending on the workload that I had. However, the best way that I realized that worked out for me to use my time was to prioritize. So for instance, I would use my time on things that would improve my life and help me to make progress in life. So I would choose wisely what it is that I'm using time on. So instead of watching TV after home, I would invest my time to read the book of Proverbs or to go on further writing the book. During lunchtime at work, I wouldn't just sit with colleagues and talk, idle talk, but I would actually spend 30 minutes researching using Wi-Fi and everything so that I could gather enough data. So by all means, I would try to prioritize my time and use it on things that are valuable so that I wouldn't waste it. So that's how I was able to apply it, spend less time with friends, even on weekends, because in as much as money can be used to invest, time is also a currency that we can use to invest if we learn how to invest it properly. As long as we put it into practice, the results or the gain does come, after a while. So that's how I used it. Yes.
How do you balance then, or how would you advise a young person to balance the aspect of using time wisely and the social life? They say you must have a balance. You should not focus too much on things that are, very serious, but you must also be able to do the other side, like interacting with people, spending time with family, like you've said. So what is it that you can advise the young people to be able to, even even older people, because there are those people now who would, do too much of social life and forget
Yes.
the other side of taking things seriously and building their purposeful life. So what is it that you can advise them? Even myself, I guess I will learn from it. What is it that you can advise us after studying the book and also writing the book based on the key, keys that you have identified to say, this is how you can balance your life and at the same time living a purpose, kind of driven life?
Yes. So what I would say is, what young people and everyone in particular needs to realize is that we as human beings are made to communicate with others. We depend on relationships. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's a need for belonging. We want to belong somewhere. We want to belong with a group of people. And hence, that's why people want to identify perhaps with famous soccer teams, because they want to belong. We want to belong in family structures. We want to belong, and that sense of belonging is fulfilled by having relationships that are strong and that become support structures. However, the most important thing is to realize that not every relationship is good for us, first and foremost. So before you even think about spending time with family, you should first consider if the family members that you spend time with, what is it that what value do they add to your life, if I may say. It goes on to the point whereby certain family members, like I know my grandfather, he would always encourage me to study more. He would always encourage me to do the best that I can in life, you know. So whenever I spend time with him, I know that I'm lifted up. He gives me hope and courage that, you know what, I can do more in the future. So someone like that adds value to my life in a psychological way by helping me to believe in myself first and foremost. And when I spend more time with him, I feel that I belong in his family. I feel that I belong with him as his grandson. Also, it also enforces belonging and also enforces true values in life, that I need to go on. So the most important thing is to first identify relationships that add value to your life. And if they do add value to your life, such relationships are worthy of your time. However, there will be relationships like having friends, family members that only abstract value from your life. Perhaps I'm an author and I write books, at night, or maybe I'm working on a book and I have friends who only abstract value from my life. So they abstract time, they ask me from 6 p.m. up until tomorrow morning, let's go drink, it's the weekend, you know. Such people are only abstracting value from my life because as soon as we go drink, what is it they're gonna ask for? They're also gonna ask me to contribute with my money towards what it is that we're gonna be drinking or doing at that time. And then in such situations, you see that there's no progress in that, but it's only such practices only bring disaster and they bring disaster and make us live a worthless life. And therefore we lose purpose and we lose the blessings such as time that God has given to us and also resources such as money. So that's what people need to first and foremost identify relationships that add value to your life. If you see that such relationships do add value to your life, then feel free to invest in them. And
Yeah.
as you invest in them, the limits will come naturally. You know how long you should spend time with them.
In studying
Yes.
the book of Proverbs, and writing your book, did you pick up that which you have just said? Did Solomon identify relationships that were adding value to him towards building his wisdom? Or because you said something about wisdom is knowledge, and the Bible will say, my people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Yes.
How did you capture that aspect of, building relationships and the keys that you have identified and things that Solomon, when you were studying him, his wisdom, have led to you, narrating the way people should lead their lives without us, focusing too much on your experiences more, though they play a role, but more on what you have learned that led to you realizing that these keys will actually add value to somebody's life.
Yes. So in the book of Proverbs, Psalms as well, Solomon says when he was growing up, he was the only child, raised up by his mother. However, his father David had many sons and daughters, but his father David would call Solomon and say, "My son," I quote, "listen to me. Uh, Listen to my instructions. Take heed to my wisdom, because it will preserve you. It will give you long life." David went on to share certain things with Solomon that were of wisdom. And the thing is, what I realized reading the book was that David had many sons whom he shared this knowledge and wisdom with. But Solomon was the only son now who was able to grasp and recognize that David, his father, was teaching him something of value, to the extent that if you look at the lives of David's sons, like Absalom, you look at Solomon, and you look at Bolet, sorry. Yes, yes, you realize that Solomon was the only one amongst all of his brothers who made good decisions because he took his father's instructions. So that's when I started to learn the key of having relationships that add value.
Mhm.
Yes, so that's when I recognized. And then in the book of Proverbs, Solomon now goes on to warn us, and he says, "Do not walk in the way of the scoffers." He goes on to say, "Do not keep company with a easily tempered man. Do not become friends with someone who's easily angered, because you will learn his ways, you know." And then that taught me something. It made me realize that we become influenced by the company we keep.
Mm.
So therefore, even science goes on to say that you are the average 5 of the 4 people you spend most time with. So if I spend more time with people who are business minded, sooner or later, I will start to think like them, because the way they think and the way they do things is part of their culture. And then they pass that culture on to me, and they pass those practices and beliefs to me. So that's when I started realizing the importance of having key relationships that are good for me, even at a young age, because it's better to grow up with something, as you go along,
Mm.
Yes.
When it comes to the keys, you said you identified 35 keys, right?
Yes.
And I would assume, because Solomon was a king and a
Yes.
leader, meaning
Yeah.
there has to be some areas that speaks to leadership that led to you probably identifying some of the keys that leaders can also learn from when reading your book. What are those things that you have identified from Solomon and his wisdom, and his management of wealth, for instance? because I remember you indicating in some instance that the gold was not an issue during the time of Solomon. So poverty was not part of the equation for the people under Solomon. So I just want to get a sense of how have you related our country, probably let's say Africa as a whole, and looking at Solomon's leadership based on the wisdom and knowledge that he was applying, and in line with the keys that you have identified.
Okay. So what made Solomon different from all other kings is that he was, number one, so wise. He had knowledge of everything. The Bible says that Solomon was able to tell you about the trees that grew in a faraway forest where he's never been before, but he would be able to tell you about it. And then he would be able to tell you about all the birds of the air as a leader. So what that means is the first key is that Solomon knew the importance of acquiring knowledge and wisdom as a leader. Because now what he would do with that knowledge and wisdom, he would use it to drive his vision for the kingdom. And as we know that Solomon had a vision of building the temple of God that he had been assigned by God to build. Because leaders need to remember that vision is a key aspect of leadership. The Bible goes on to say, Solomon himself, he says, if the blind leads the blind, both of those people will fall into a pit. If the blind leads the blind. And what does that simply say? It simply means if a leader who has no knowledge becomes leader over people, he will lead the people into a ditch, into a pit, into disaster, into poverty, into calamity, into wars, because he has no knowledge now on how to run a country, or he has no knowledge on how to run a province. So the first key aspects I identified was knowledge, the importance of knowledge. Number two, also the importance of having a vision now. And then Solomon went on to say in the book of Proverbs, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So what that simply means, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, it means that if a leader can see, it's okay, even if the people cannot see, because he will tell them which way to go and which way not to go. Now, when he says in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is see, the one-eyed man doesn't actually mean a physical eye, but it means someone with knowledge now can be able to lead all the blind people into the right area. So knowledge and vision. And number two, another aspect of leadership that I picked up from Solomon was being a leader who enforced justice at all levels of his leadership, at all levels of his kingdom. So that's one thing Solomon fought for. If someone came to Solomon and brought a case and actually said, King Solomon, I have a problem. This and that has been happening in my life, and I believe that I should get justice. Maybe say a poor widow comes and says, I have a problem. There's a rich man who has not been paying me my wages or my salary. And I've been working for this man for a whole year, and he has only paid me perhaps for 6 months. And I've tried by all means to ask him, to beg him, but because he is a man of influence, I haven't been able to convince him. And because I'm a poor, helpless widow with no one to fight for my cause, I have not been able to convince him to pay me. So now, King Solomon, will you please help me? The king will not look at who's more rich or who's less poor, but he would, by all means, make sure that he enforces justice and make sure that if the widow is correct, if she's right, and she hasn't been paid for 6 months and more, he would make sure that the widow is paid. all of her wages, and even more, because now she has gone through a process of suffering because of her employer. So justice was also another key aspect. Another one I noticed from King Solomon is that he loved his people, his kingdom, so much that he wanted them to be rich. So that's another key principle aspect that Solomon had. King Solomon believed that as a leader's wealth is measured by the prosperity of his people. So Solomon built a temple that is still around up to this day, including his palace that he built for his Egyptian wife that he had married. Both of those buildings are still there. And they were both beautiful buildings with gold inside and everything. But however, the people inside who were living inside Solomon's kingdom were so wealthy that they considered silver to be of less value because gold was so common in his days. And gold was not only common to the king and the royal family, but gold was common to the whole population. So whenever certain kings, like the Queen of Sheba, came to visit Solomon and they saw his kingdom and they saw his administration and they saw his workers and they saw his cupbearers and they saw his bakers, the people that were working for him, the queen actually said, "Oh, how happy are the people who work alongside you, your cupbearers, how happy are they, those who hear your wisdom." And she said this not only speaking of his wisdom only, because she was looking at the way they were dressed, looking at the way they were. They must have been well fed, number one. They must have been well educated. They must have been well treated as people who work for the king. And if they are well treated, well fed, wealthy as well as people who work for their king, so are their families that they represent who are left at home doing other jobs and everything. She actually said that now, referring to the whole kingdom, the whole population of Solomon, referring to how blessed the people of his kingdom were, because the king was so wise and was an honest king who wanted to enforce justice and take care of his people by all means. That's another aspect. A king's wealth to King Solomon is measured by the prosperity of his people. So countries that are wealthy, even if a president is wealthy, even if Obama was wealthy, even if Donald Trump or anyone is wealthy, it doesn't matter. If a country is truly wealthy, it should be measured by the population of the country, how wealthy they are. So if, for instance, in, say, Kwamashu, a township here in KZN, there's people that are poor and suffering and they have no services that are offered to them. However, and you find that the mayor who lives in that province or who is looking after that city, he's wealthy, he's got multiple businesses, he travels well, he's got influence, he's well respected. In reality, he's not really rich because he has not been able to make his people prosper. So a leader's wealth is not measured by the money that he has, it's measured by the prosperity of his people. So that's another key aspect and I learned from King Solomon. Yes.
This is really fascinating. I am actually blown away. I like that. A leader is measured by the success of his people. If we're to bring it home and look at our country, there's so many issues relating to poverty and so forth, but yet we are told that our leaders are quite wealthy and so forth. So my understanding is that, will I be right to say, or will I be right to say, reading your book will make a person realize and do an introspection as to whether they're adding value to the people that they are leading or not. And over and above that, you spoke about values that your grandfather instilled when raising you, and also the values that David instilled on Solomon when he was growing up. We are now living in a country which is considered to be, it's like the values of Ubuntu, or I am because you are, kind of an approach to life, is not necessarily being, upheld. One. Secondly, there are so many single parents who do not have, or kids that are growing up, or young people that are growing up in families that do not have fathers. How do they tap into this wisdom and values that David gave to Solomon as he was growing up? There are so many single mothers who are raising boys, and they may not have an opportunity to have a father who will give them these values. What would be, a benefit of reading your book from the eye of a parent who does not have a male figure in the house?
Okay. So let me start with the last question. What would be the benefits of parents who are single mothers, raising men, boys who will soon be men? What will they gain? How will the book help them? So basically growing up in a family structure, the significant role that a male figure plays in a family is that he teaches, number one, his son how to be a man, if I may say. So if a father figure is not present, the child will grow, say a boy will grow, but if there is no one that the child will look up to and say, I want to be a man like that one day, the child will not understand what it is to be a man. Because there's something we have to differentiate. Being born male or female is a biological reality. It's something we cannot choose. Being born male or female is just a biological reality. We cannot choose it. But now, becoming a man and a woman is something that we must learn. So parents reading this book will actually learn that boys from a young age are supposed to be taught how to be a man. They are supposed to be taught manhood. And if I may simply say, what is manhood? Manhood is understanding that the man is the foundation of the home, not the head, the foundation of the home. He is the source. He carries everything, the whole load of the house. So therefore, a man who is taught that now will understand that he should not be taking from his family, but he should go out, work, and bring in value to the family, ensure that the family has enough resources, supplies that they need, whether it be groceries, money to pay for school fees, and also protection, make sure that the family is protected. Because the way God built a man was in such a way that he gave him a stronger muscle structure so that he may be able to protect his family. But a man should not use that muscle structure now to abuse the family, like to hit his wife or to hit his mom, but he should actually use it to protect them from outside harm. A man can protect you from a dog when you're walking with him, even if it's a young boy. But the fact that, they have more courage and they're willing to stand while the female runs away, it's okay. It's part of their job. So the book will help the mothers learn these principles. And then the mothers are the nurturers. The women are nurturers by nature. They were made to be able to nurture broad, take care of it, and see that whatever they're taking care of becomes the full product of what it was made to be. So a mother will learn that, let me teach my son these principles from a young age. I cannot physically show him, because I'm not a man, referring to the mother, but however, I can talk to him about these things and help him understand that being a man is something that we must learn and become. But being male is a biological feature that we get. It's not something we choose. That's why in our lives we have people who are males, but they have chosen to live a life of being a female. And we have females who are born females, but they have chosen to live a life of being a male, which vividly shows that manhood is something that we must do. So I'm not a man because I have a structure, because I talk like this. I am a man because of my character, because of my qualities, knowing how to take care of the family. So those are some of the principles that the mothers will learn from the book and actually start to teach their son. And when another principle that's very important, something that mothers who are raising up boys and their fathers being absent, not being around, is that they will learn that a man needs to learn, even a man and a female, they need to learn to obey or to submit to a male figure from a young age. Because now it's so important to such an extent that a male figure represents authority and power in a good way. Power is not a bad thing. Power is basically the ability to control situations. That's power. So power is not a bad thing. So when you have a male figure in the house, you have someone who is of authority and represents power. So being ordered around by such a father figure in the house teaches one how to submit under a male figure, to the extent that if the father figure is absent and the child grows up without a father figure who will impose power and authority early in their life, they will actually struggle later on in life when now they have to submit to power and authority, maybe at their workplace. Maybe they meet some family members now, and they maybe have to go live with them for whatever situation. They will sort of struggle because they're not used to it. Whereas mothers are different. They bring a different element into the upbringing of a child. So mothers would actually understand that figure now. Moving on to that other question, can you please remind me those two other ones? Oh, what would a person, if someone had to read my book, would they be more enlightened about leaders? Our current leaders, would they be enlightened about our leaders? Was that the
Will
question?
there be the type of leadership skills they need to acquire, or even approaches based on what you have identified by studying Solomon?
Yes. So a person reading my book would actually learn what leadership is. A person reading my book would understand the difference between a professional manipulator, criminal, the difference between a professional manipulator, criminal, and a true leader. I'll put it this way. True leaders will actually deny their own self-preservation for the upbringing and prosperity of their people. What I mean by that is simply that true leaders will go to the extent of risking their own lives for the benefits of the many. So they're all about saving. I'll make an example. We once had a leader, Nelson Mandela, who had his own profession as a lawyer. He was working, he had a good job, but he realized that within his country, there was apartheid. There were laws that were oppressing Black people. And the more he practiced law, the more he recognized that there's a problem and someone needs to stand up for this. However, let's keep in mind, there were many leaders at that time, apart from Nelson Mandela, who knew that there was a problem of apartheid, but they never did anything because they were more concerned about their own self-preservation and safety and their leadership role. But Mandela went to the extent of risking his life for the benefits of the many. He risked his life even going to jail for 27 years. That's another aspect. Another one that the person would learn is to be able to identify leaders by realizing that leaders are people who bring change in a situation. Leaders bring change to the extent that leaders will not be happy about everything that's happening. I'll make an example. Bringing more jobs is not bringing more change or any change, because jobs have always been there. But if a leader says, let me come, if you vote me into power, I will actually end unemployment using a strategy of self-employment. And then the leader would actually introduce or implement a strategy that will benefit everyone. But by the end of his term, we as people, educated or uneducated people, would be able to vividly see the change that he brought. For example, we have a problem with ESCOM. A leader would come into the space and say, I'm putting an end to the load shedding that we're having. That's my focus. That's the only thing I'm going to focus on. A leader would come into the space and actually say, I'm putting an end to the whole thing of state capture or whatever it is. I want our South African airport services to be fully owned by South Africa. I want South Africa to have its own air flight company that's 100% owned. I'm gonna work on that. That's the change I'm gonna bring. I'm gonna bring a change to the extent that air flights or to fly from Joburg to KZN will be so cheap that it's only gonna be a 20 rand difference between a bus and an aeroplane. That's the change a leader would bring to make it more convenient for his people. So people reading the book would be able to learn such characteristics of leadership within the book. Another one they would learn regarding leadership is character. And character is simply a leader being one with his word. I'll put it like this. If I tell you that I will meet you tomorrow at 8 o'clock a.m. in the morning, I have given you my word. You will believe it and you will wait for me. But if I do not come, you will feel disappointed. Why? Because I have not kept my word. So character is basically being one with my word. My word, what I speak to you, being one with my action and being one with my lifestyle. So therefore, whatever promise I make to you, I must have character now to carry it out and deliver what I've promised. That's what they would learn from leadership. Leaders are leaders because of character. They have strong convictions, beliefs about the situation and about themselves to the extent that they will never break it for any other reason. Say, for instance, a leader comes into power and he says, I want to make sure that each and every South African who is unemployed has a business. I'll implement the strategy. But then he comes into power and he starts to work on his implementation process, and maybe it's going to take 2 years. Along the journey, people come to him and offer him huge amounts of money and say, you know what, your idea is good, but if you carry it out, we as this company, so and so, are gonna lose so much money. So please, therefore, take this 50 million rand, just don't carry on with the project, leave it where it is, and let us take care of the rest. A leader has strong convictions, beliefs that they're not willing to break it up for anyone. So a leader would say, no ways, You can give me your whole house full of gold or anything else. I will not do what it is you want, because I must have character. I have strong convictions about what it is that I want to carry out. Money or wealth or fame will not replace this. It's something that I must do. So that's another characteristic or quality that would learn about leaders.
Mm.
And then
The program is, the platform is about, are we transforming, right?
Mm.
Looking at your book and the keys that you have identified, would you say that as a continent and also as a country, are we really transforming? And if not, what are the things that we can identify from your book, besides the ones that you've already highlighted? I want you to zoom into the poverty side of things, where you spoke about gold not being an issue in the times of Solomon. I don't want to read the summary you gave me because I don't want to give it away, but I just want you to speak to it and just indicate, are we really transforming when it comes to applying the knowledge or acquiring the knowledge, as your book would assist in letting people be able to acquire such knowledge and wisdom? And what can we do to get to the point which you are indicating in your book?
Yes. So I would say, as a country, we are transforming, but not in the direction that we were hoping to go to, not to what we want as the people, especially regarding poverty. I once sat with a founder of a non-Christian organization, and we were talking about what was currently happening in the country. And she said, it's so sad that for 27 years, the people have not seen any change in the country, referring to South African citizens. And it just showed me how much, how much has been going on, but still no change regarding poverty. And why are we not transforming, honestly? Because now we need first to be transformed in our minds, if I may say. We always talk about decolonization of the country, whereby the capitalists or the people controlling the world take off their hands from our resources, from our country's resources, such as gold, diamonds, and everything. Because we have, as South Africans, a belief that once we're able to take these resources as a country, our country would get wealthy. But I think we should start transforming our minds first, to such an extent that we have to start loving ourselves first and foremost as Black people. Why am I saying this? Because I feel that we are transforming to a burning pot. How? Because the leaders that we have are not psychologically transformed. So therefore, when they get into power, because of the past experience that they've had, being denied access to certain resources for a certain period of time, and such thinking or thought patterns being passed down from one generation to the next actually started to go into their minds. So when they get into power, they're super hungry to the extent that all the resources that they're supposed to manage, they actually now start to want all of it for themselves and for their families. And then what does that create? Mismanagement of resources will always result in poverty, lack, suffering, especially when it's mismanagement of resources from the leaders, from the people in power, because now it becomes a ripple effect it starts from them, they benefit, but we, those who are down there in the hierarchy system, will actually start to suffer. So what happens then, all of a sudden there's poverty, not even all of a sudden, there's been poverty from 1993. I was born in 1993. And the change that we see is only just crumbs, if I may say, little pieces, to such an extent that the only thing that we can say is happening is free education, of which even free education we did not get fully. We still have to pay. So basically what I'm saying is we are transforming, but not in the direction that we wanted. So therefore, such transformation is the reason, some of the reasons why I was prompted to write this book, so that if people get this knowledge of which direction we should be heading towards, which leaders we should put and vote into power, we can actually start to go in the right direction. Because I believe that it is never too late to transform in the right direction, but it's just a matter of having the right vision, right leadership, and being courageous enough to pursue that dream or that vision for our country, And then also as individuals, we have been transforming into depending more and more on our leaders as communities now, especially. We should come to a point where we are transformed to such an extent that we believe so much in ourselves that we believe that we can do it ourselves. And once we start to believe that we can do it ourselves, what will happen is we will support each other. For instance, you'll open up a business, and because I believe in you, I'll support your business, and the other way around. And then within a short period of years, what's going to happen is business and self-employment will become a culture in our community. And the younger generations will be born and raised in such a culture that is driven by self-employment and being business-minded, that they will not even be dependent on government grants. They will not be dependent on free education. They will not be dependent on the coronavirus 350 grant that we are currently getting, but they will be go-getters by nature because of the culture that they are raised up in. So the solution, as we have been discussing, is simply acquiring more knowledge of who we are as human beings. And that knowledge comes from knowing God, I believe, because the more we know God, the more we start to see that we are made in his image, and we understand it. And once we understand that, we start to understand the power that we have within ourselves, as human beings. And then once we start to understand that power, we'll put it into practice rather than always marching to the union building and asking the government to raise our salary or wages up more, because whoever you ask for your freedom basically controls it. I believe that whoever you ask for your freedom controls it. Whoever you ask for your salary to go up basically controls it. And once we move away from the shift of being dependent on people, on jobs, on government, and start to understand that as people we can determine our own value, we will be able to empower ourselves and empower others. But the only way we can get to that destination is by being psychologically transformed. And what will transform us mentally? Knowledge of who we are, knowledge from Solomon's wisdom as he was the wealthiest king. And the funny thing is, Solomon's prayer, he only asked for wisdom. But God said, since you have asked for such a noble thing, not only will I give you wisdom, but I will give you wealth. I will give you a long life. I will give you peace from all your enemies. So what that showed me is that wisdom can actually get you all of those things. Knowledge can actually get you all of those things. It wasn't just something that God blessed him with, but God knew that if I give him knowledge, wisdom, is gonna be able now to acquire these, because wisdom is a package that comes with all of these things, So yes.
I am so blown away. I am so blown away. If you have a copy of your book, I would love to have you showing it to the viewers so that people can
Okay.
see what the book looks like. Ladies and gentlemen,
Okay.
we have Bongumenzi. Did I say it
Yes.
correctly?
Yes, you said it
You
correctly,
must thank the
Bongumenzi.
maker, right?
Yes, we must thank the maker.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thank the maker for having created a person like you who allowed
Yes.
God to use him to
Yes.
write a book that I believe all of us are going to benefit from it. I like the fact that you have taken what most people will consider as a Christian look to things and put it to practicality and making people realize that it doesn't matter whether it's a Bible or it's a Quran or whatever, as long as there are principles which we would have to look at and follow through and make sure that we implement to the T. It's actually what we're doing it will actually assist us to live our lives every day in a manner that will, be emulating what Solomon and his people were doing. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I am really grateful that we made time to talk about this. Maybe in
yeah.
closing, you can just sum up what is it that people can find in your book. I think you have said a mouthful, but you may not have touched on some of the things that I have read from the summary of the book. Just,
Mm.
in short, what are the things that people should look out for, which they can apply on their day-to-day, lives, which will make them to improve, because the idea is for us to transform, right? So
Yeah.
this book should be able to allow even myself to transform, and look at things differently, lead differently. Um, Complaining will not help, but I need to capacitate myself by acquiring knowledge, which
Mm.
most of us are very lazy to do. So
Yeah.
you can show us the picture of your book, and then
Yeah.
yeah, we'll make sure that we share it in all our platforms for people to see what you have in store for them. But just in closing, give us sort of a summation of what to look out for and where to find the book and where they can buy the book so that people can go and buy it and support you, but at the same time, acquiring knowledge.
Yes. Okay. So this is the copy of the book. I
Okay.
hope you guys can see it.
Yeah,
Let
a
me bring
little
it
bit.
closer.
Yes. You'll also send me a picture so that I can put it on the screen, but yes, I can see it.
Yes. So I'll send a picture.
All right.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Um, what I like about it is that it's a short book. It's not long. It's something that you can read more than 5 times. But the content inside, the message inside, is really powerful, as we have discussed some of it. And what I just touched on is simply, just a little bit there and there. So, in closing, from the book, a reader will actually understand the purpose of life. You know, many times we live life not knowing what it is that we're living for.
Mm.
Number one, we live life not knowing who we are, not knowing where we're from, not knowing why we're living, not knowing what our potential is, and not knowing what it is that we are gifted in. So the book helps one become aware of such questions that we need to answer. And then it also gives direction to how a person can get those answers. And why is it important to discover purpose? It's important to discover purpose because purpose gives us identity of who we are. So I believe that my purpose as Bongumenzi Sabela is to write books and teach people biblical principles. So already I have identified who I am I have identified my purpose and I've identified my gift. So therefore, how does that help me knowing my purpose? It helps me to align or position myself in life in such a way that anything that does not contribute to my purpose has no space in my life. It protects me, you know. So those are some of the keys a person will get. Also a gift, the importance of having, not even having, discovering our life, God-given inherent gift, you know, comes with, we get to see that and understand that in the book, because Solomon had the gift of wisdom. That was his gift. You know, he asked God for it and God gave it to him. And also we learn about in the book, something I didn't mention, we learn a lot about gender. We learn about males and females. And as we discussed earlier on a bit, that relationships are important. So the book identifies characteristics of good women, and it actually shows characteristics of not to say bad women, but women that we should be, you know, cautious of. The same applies for men as well. It teaches us how to identify and see a good man. It teaches us how to see and identify a wicked man, as the Bible says, so that we do not get close to those people and actually end up messing our lives by having relationships with them, you know. So it teaches a lot about that as well. And also planning, as we mentioned, it teaches a lot on a spiritual side as well, but in a way that each and every reader can understand. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with the concepts of soul ties, you know, but I don't want to go too deep, but it's like if I get involved in a sexual intercourse with someone, not only is it a physical thing, but it's also a spiritual thing, to the extent that we are now connected spiritually. As the Bible says, if a man comes together with a woman, they become one flesh. So if we are one flesh, we are one spirit. And though, even if we are separated, our souls, spirits are still tied together. And why is it a problem if we are tied together, but we're not cautious of it? It's because whatever affects the other person's spirits has a gateway, a door also to my spirit. So if, for instance, I don't believe in witchcraft, but I'll use it as an example. If, for instance, someone uses witchcraft on me, then that witchcraft also has a doorway, a passage to my partner through the spiritual realm, you know. So those are some of the concepts. Yes. And yeah, and many other things that are there. Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes. Sorry about that. I'm sorting my electricity too.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
Yeah, I'm sorting my electricity too. But other than that, I think you
That's each other me.
sorry about that. The summation was quite profound and something that I think many people will resonate with, will actually relate with. I would actually, yeah, I would have loved you to go deeper into soul ties, but yeah, it was not for today. It's something that
Yes.
I think we can look into going forward. But yes, where do they get the book?
Yes. So the book, for now, because I published it on the 20th of October last month, it is only available in Durban. However, if someone orders, then we'd have to make arrangement on how to deliver it, you know, to them. But however, I am making preparations. I've made preparations to get it to Amazon on the Amazon website. So before the end of the year, it's gonna be available there. It's available in Durban on a couple of shops. Durban, because I'm close to Durban in the city, on a couple of shops. Adams Bookstore. It's also gonna be available in Dodi soon because I've made arrangements with a bookshop in Dodi. And then
You
yes,
say
and
Dodi,
I
you
also
mean Amanzim Dodi?
Amanzi Mdodi, yes. Sorry, I always say Dodi. Amanzi Mdodi, yes.
Okay.
It's going to be available at the Duneside Mall before the end of this month. And then also on Amazon for people who are outside the province. However, there's also an online book that I send to people, those who don't mind reading on their computers or cell phones, perhaps for a short temporary solution. I can send it via email to anyone and they can be able to read the book. It's fully there with the cover and everything. It's just an electronic copy, an e-copy that I have. Yes, so yes, but we're still making means to distribute it. I'm still negotiating with publishers and distribution companies. Yes.
Wow. Well, congratulations on having published a book that I think is going to make a huge difference, not only to young people, but also to every age or every person of all different ages.
Yeah.
I think we need people like you who will be young people that stand up and say, "Here I am, and I want to be an example to the other young people. I have experienced specific things, but this is what I think is the way to go, and this is the approach we need to all take." We really wish you everything of the best, and we hope that we're gonna have more sessions about your book. I'll also get a copy for myself so that we can look at chapter by chapter and learn from it. I really like to close by saying a leader is measured by the success of his people. And I'm sure that you don't mean a leader in terms of politicians, because you can be a leader in every small space where you find yourself leading. And you must be able to look at people that you work with and make a difference in their lives. I always say to my colleagues, if I work with you and you don't end up getting any promotion, you stay here forever, then it means I didn't do my job well. So you have actually sort of emphasized that aspect of saying, when I look back, I should be able to say, everybody who works with me is now at a different level than where I found them to have been. And that is leadership. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you so very much. We really appreciate this opportunity, and yeah, wish you all the best and happy birthday in advance.
yes,
Day after tomorrow.
yes, on the 8th of November,
Wow.
on Monday, yes.
So we're very privileged to have you on our platform just before your birthday and talk about your book. I'm glad that we really had this opportunity to talk. Continue doing that which you're doing, and don't let anybody, pull you back and say, no, it's not gonna sell. It is going to sell. And even if it doesn't sell probably the way you want, we don't want to even declare that it won't sell the way you want. It will go beyond your expectations and make sure that it changes lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we have Sabela, Mr. Sabela. And we're gonna share with you the book as we download and publish the video. And we'll also share the details of where you can contact him and buy the book from him so that he can courier it to you. But for tonight, we really thank you that you have taken time to come and engage with us. And those who will watch, please enjoy the video and learn from it. I believe that it's gonna change your life one way or the other, and even the way you look at things. But I am Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and we are transforming. Slowly but surely we're getting there. Thank you so much, Sabela. I'll call you Sabela because your name is a bit unusual, eh?
Yes, no, it's okay. It's okay. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be part of the show.
You must have a very good evening.